Begin the current Daf Mesech Sotah Daf Chav Zayin. Begin the bottom line of Chavav Mabeis, where the Gemara continues a related discussion. We had mentioned why does it say the word Shichva Zera. So the Gemara said Prat Ladavar Acher, which ultimately the Gemara came out to say what it is that other thing is coming to exclude, which is what's called Kina Lo Derech Evarm, which generally the halacha of Sotah, Kinoi, and Stira is regarding the halacha that she's being bezana. But we said that's what Zera comes to say. Makam sheyochel azriya, excluding if, let's say, just that they're gonna be hanging around with their limbs and in inappropriate type of conduct. Gemara says, why do I need to have a pasuk to exclude that? You would have thought because the pasuk makes it particular on the husband's hakpada. It says bikine. You would think that he's makbid, so it should work. And that's what we say kamash malon. That's not going to. That's how Gemara continues a related vein about pritzis that what that relationship is regarding the marriage relationship in a related vein. Sure, it corresponds to B'kalzik and Cheskel. Turn to Daf Chaim. I'm doing this for today's daf. Some of the in today's daf are the Gemara starts off with what's called Duma Bas Duma. Duma is someone that people talk about, which is she doesn't have such a good reputation. She's a woman of ill repute, and she has a daughter. Who is it better to marry if you only can marry one of these two women? The Duma, the one that people are speaking about, or the daughter of the Duma? And that relates to, the Gemara ultimately ends up saying, Bas Duma, because Rei Bilas Achabal. That the daughter of the Duma, although she's being mazana with other men, but most of the bees are with the husband, and we presume that the paternity of the child would be from the father, hence not a mamzeres or something like that. But then the Gemara gets into the conversation, what happens if she's very parz, she's very inappropriate, and maybe then we would not say Rabbi Achabal. And that relates to the question about Isha Misabera Samach Levesto Itfila. So when does a woman get pregnant? People want to try to get to the time when they could become pregnant. Is that actually close to her vest when she's expecting her period? Or is it actually close to the Tvila, which is when she goes to the mikvah? Is that the time when she's most able to conceive? And Bezdin Bekadla, and the Gemara ends off this parak by discussing what we mentioned in the Mishnah, that there's certain types of women that the husband's not available or able to warn them, and then the court therefore goes ahead and warns. And the last thing this parak mentions is several conditions which disqualify a husband from bringing his wife to drink, which is really the theme of this parak, which if chigeres, if she or he is lame, gidemes, if an amputee, ilme is mute, or summa or blind, if any one of them have one of those flaws, then they're not going to have the halacha of the Mei Sotah. And then the next parak starts with Mein Boit Kan Oisai, that the water not only checks her, it also checks him, which will explain who that him is. And the halacha b'such l'ba'al l'bayil, that when the woman becomes forbidden because of a Sotah, not only to the husband, but it's also to the man that she was suspected of being mizana with. So we begin the current Daf Chav Zayin, the bottom line of Chavav Mabeis. Amar Shmuel. Shmuel says, Yisa Adam, a person should marry, as we continue top of Chav Zayin Menal, Duma. What's Duma? So Rashi says Duma is a terminology of excess talking, which in this context means to say that everyone's talking about this woman's extramarital relationships. So a person should marry a Duma, Ba'isa Bas Duma, but don't marry the daughter of that woman that everyone's talking about. Why? So on that, Shmuel explains, says Shazul, because the Duma, Bo Mitipik Shera. She comes from a kosher seed, meaning her parents were upstanding from a mention, and she's, however, going ahead and hanging around with other men. But she comes from a kosher seed. But the Bas Duma, she, who knows who her father is? Maybe it's a non-Jew, maybe it's a mamzer, because her mother was the one that was hanging around in the wrong places. So rather marry the Duma and not the Bas Duma. Rabbi Shloimy says, no, the opposite. Yisa Adam Bas Duma. A person should marry the daughter of the Duma. But Yisa Duma, don't marry the Duma. Why? So he explains. Shazuka's the daughter, Omedes Becheskas Kashas. She stands in her presumed status of validity, and that she's permitted to her husband. And the fact that maybe she's a tipa psula, no, that we're not concerned about. Because, as the Gemara is going to tell us shortly, Roiv Be'ilo is achrabal. Most acts of cohabitation, we presume, is with the husband, and that she became pregnant from the husband. So therefore, she has a cheskes kashrus. Meaning, for her husband, if you're going to marry the Bas Duma, she's a faithful wife. But if you marry the Duma, the mother, she doesn't have a presumed status of validity, because whoever she's married to, she's mezana with within that relationship, and she's going to become forbidden to the husband as an Eishes Ish. He's not going to see, he's not going to divorce her, and then he's going to have relations with her in the prohibited status. So rather marry the Bas Duma and not the Duma. Now, on this last opinion of Rabbi Yechanan, the Gemara asks Meisvei from a brayso that seems to clearly contradict him. The brayso says, Noisa Adam Duma. A person should marry the Duma, the woman who they're speaking about. Clearly, not like Rabbi Yechanan says that you should marry the daughter of the Duma. To which Amar Rava, he doesn't like the question. He says, Fetizbra, you think it's logical, the wording of the brayso, Noise? The word Noise is likatchila. It's like, you should go ahead and marry the Duma. Now, most definitely, this woman is a mukulkelis. She's not an ideal type of a wife. Ella, rather, obviously, this brayso is error, and if you want to resolve and explain the brayso, you'll have to say it means im nasa. If a person marries a Duma, then she's going to be permitted to him. Now, so therefore, since you anyways have to resolve and edit the brayso, obviously the Tan is not precise, and therefore you cannot ask him it, because then you could say that there's another error in the brayso. And if that's the case, Tininami Bas Duma. So you're editing Noise to Nasa, you could also edit Duma to Bas Duma. And when we said this halacha of that the person should marry this one and not this one, it doesn't mean liketchila if you find another woman to marry. But someone that can only marry one of these two, that's what we're saying, marry this one and don't marry that one. But al kapanim, it's not necessarily a contradiction under Rabbi Yechanan, because you could edit Duma to Bas Duma. But the Gemara concludes and says, V'hilchasa, what's the halacha? Is Yisa Adam Bas Duma B'al Yisa Duma. Marry the daughter of the Duma and don't marry the Duma. What's the reason for that? Because the Tani Rav Tachlifa B'Marava Kamei de Rabavo, he taught the following brayso. Isha mezana, a woman who is mezana, we know she's a woman of ill repute. People know that she's being mezana. But neha kasherin, her children, which very technically they could be mamzerim, no, we say the children are kosher. Because Raiv be'ilois achar habal, most of the be'ilois, we go with laws of Raiv, are from the husband. Therefore, the Bas Duma, since she's a ksheira, it's better that you marry her, that at least your relationship with her will be b'cheskes heter, and don't marry the Duma, even though she comes from a tipa ksheira, we know for sure that she's not a mamzeres, but she's going to be makalkal, she's going to have relations with other men, and then she's become a forbidden to him, and he's not going to know, and therefore rather marry the daughter of the woman of ill repute. Now, however, Rav Amar, however, has the following question. What if she was especially promiscuous, where you could be concerned maybe that actually Roiv Be'ilois, maybe most of her cohabitation is actually from other people, and you lose the Roiv. Now, what would that be? Would her children be kosher? She has a whole family, this woman, and she has services that she does, and what's with those children? So the Gemara says as follows. Alibid Mandam, according to the one who says that in isha misaberes ela samach lavesta, a woman only conceives close to the time period, let's say a day before she gets her, there's something called a vest, which is a time that is expected to get a period, which is generally around once a month. So like a day before a vest is when she's the most fertile, is when she's able to conceive. So according to that man, there's no question in the world that for this answer. Why? Because the husband doesn't know exactly the calendar of his wife to know when she's going to become a nida day before, and therefore v'loy minterla. He cannot protect her and watch her and guard her that whole day from being mazana, that she should not become pregnant from znus, from some other man. He knows she's doing other things, but he doesn't want to have children that are not his own. So he doesn't know when her vest is. So he cannot safeguard her. So therefore, as the Gemara assumes to say, that since most be'ilas are not from the husband, and he doesn't have a way of guarding her, we're going to presume the children are not kosher. The whole question would be, according to the one who says, which is machlekes mesechtes nida flamen alpha mebeis, that einisha misaberes elo samach litvilasa, which is the common woman has today, generally after mikvah, is when the woman would be the most able to conceive. Oh, so then that's our question, that after she tables, generally the day of the mikvah or the following day is when she could conceive. So even the yadaba, so he knows the wife's going to the mikvah a whole week. She wasn't going, and then she comes back home. So he'll guard her. He knows this type of wife that he has. So maybe then you'll say that we will say the children are kosher because he knows when it's going to be. And he doesn't want to have little mamzerim running around the house. Maybe no, keeping the prut to be yosef, since she's so promiscuous, loy, no, meaning he cannot guard her because suddenly she's not there anymore, out the door. Nailim geworden. And therefore, this is going to take her, it's not let it stand. It's not clear, even if he knows the day when she could conceive, she might be sliding out the door and he's like, where'd you go? Oh, I just went to the store, I got something, but and therefore the Gemara does not answer that question. Now we said it at the end of the Mishnah, we said this halacha of kinu and stira, we said ve'elu shebezin v'chulu. We said that Bezin is going to step in and is going to warn a promiscuous woman if the husband is incapable of doing so. We said if, let's say, the husband's a deaf mute, mentally deranged, locked in jail. Now, however, we had the Gemara brings this a machlokes regarding if there's halacha of drinking. We had said that, it's not to lahashkoisa, el psula mikasubasa, but says the Gemara, turn on the Brisa. The Gemara elaborates on this machlokes regarding this warning of the courts. It says in the pasuk in Bamidbar Ish, which it says over there, a man who's going to kisist the ishta, if his wife is going to stray, and mola by mola, she's going to rebel against him and have his nose with a man. That's the halacha of the Sotah. But the question is, matam alama ish ish. It says 2 times the word ish. Speak to the Jewish people and tell them ish ish kisist the ishta. Was sagst du zweimal the word ish? Says the Gemara, l'rabbis, says the Brisa, ish is cher. It's coming to include the wife of a deaf mute. Veish shayta, the wife of a mentally deranged. Veish sham, the wife of a person who had some type of a break. V'shalach balam din zayam, or the husband went overseas, or v'shayichavish bebeis husband locked up in jail. In other words, the husband's not available here, whether physically, mentally, emotionally, whatever it is, to do the warning to his wife. So the court steps in and they warn him to invalidate, to say you can lose your ksuba. Now, you would think that it's okay, it's a warning, even for the husband to then bring her to drink. No. Talmud says in the pasuk, the husband has to bring the wife. The drinking procedure, this whole process has to be the husband, and meaning, and we compare that for the drinking that has to be the husband. He says no, and the Gemara is going to explain this machlokes in a moment. Even to have her drink. When he comes out of jail, he'll give her a drink. But the warning, the court could do. Says what's their machlokes? Meaning, the one who warns her is the one who gives it a drink. And if you're going to ask, wait a second, Bekino also it says es ishtoi, which sounds like only the husband could warn her and not someone else. So how does the court even give her a warning? That says Rashi, that's we have a reba from ish ish. The extra word ish is coming to tell us that there are certain men that they can't do it and the courts will do it. But regarding the drinking, that no is only if it's vehevi, then it's going to be bikine. Meaning only if you have like those, only if you could do the kinoi, which if vikine, if he did the kine, then vehevi is ishte. Well, he can't when he's not doing it. The court did it. Then he could not be vehevi as ishte to bring her a drink. But if BC, so does he disagrees with that comparison? He says no. There's vikine and there's vehevi. He could do the warning and he could bring her. If he didn't do the warning, fine. The court did the warning, but he could still be behavior. He could go ahead and bring her to drink, and that's the machlokes regarding these cases of when the husband's incapable and the court does it. If it even allows to make her drink, or no, that's only to make her lose her ksuba. Now another halacha, Tanabam the Brisa. This we had referenced this earlier in the parak. It says in the pasuk, "Ashatista isha tachas isha," that if a woman will stray when she's with the marriage of her husband, which is the extra pasuk as a drasha at the end of the parasha of Zos Teres Hakanais, which we already mentioned this idea. What's the utility of this pasuk? That's lahakash ish leisha veisha leish. That's to equate and to compare the man to the woman and the woman to the man. As the Gemara is going to explain, as the Gemara asks, "Lamai hilchasa." For what halacha does this have relevancy? So Rav Sheshes, he says, "Kishem she'em hu summa." Just like if he's blind, lo hayamashka, he wouldn't give her a drink. Why not? Because it says in the pasuk, "V'nela me'eni isha," that she's hidden from the eyes of her husband. She goes and she's mezana. So kachem hoisa suma lo hoisa shaisa. So too, if she is blind, he wouldn't give her a drink. Meaning, because like we just said, the pasuk is equating isha and isha. But we come to be makash, the two of them. So just like If he is blind, because it says he has to have eyes to see her, menelam, so therefore she is being compared to Osa. If she's blind, also he's not going to give it a drink. Now Rashi Amar, which is Rashi explains that they both agree, they're just saying different parts of the Hekesh. One is talking about the Hekesh of Ish to Isha, another one explains the Hekesh of Isha to Isha, not disagreeing, they're just saying, we said the Pasuk is equating the two to each other. So one said one way and the other one saying the other way. He says, Kishem shechigeres, just like if she is lame, which is something wrong with her foot. Or vigidemes, or if she is an amputee, meaning let's her hand is cut off. Lo hoisa shaisa, she would not drink. It says in the pasuk as a gitin timid bays, the hemed hakoyin eseish lavnei Hashem. The kohen's going to have the woman stand in front of Hashem, which obviously that you have to be able to stand, and not if you're lame that you cannot stand. And it says v'nasan al kapeha, and he's going to put the mincha on her palms, which obviously means not a gidemes, which has her hands cut off. Oh, so kahu, so to him. If he was lame or if he was an amputee, mashka, he would not have given it a drink. And Rashi Omar, he adds on, he says, just like if she was mute, he wouldn't give it a drink. The Chassidus says in the pasuk, the woman says, yes, yes, she agrees to the shvuas. So to him, if he was mute, mashka, he wouldn't give her to drink. Hanulach Arusa, which I return to the fourth paragraph inside the paragraph Arusa, which spoke about primarily those cases which are exemptions to the laws of the Sotah procedure. And with that we begin the fifth paragraph Kashem Shehamayim, which continues on this theme about this procedure, the procession of the inspection of the Mei Sotah. Says the Mishnah, just like the water inspects her, as we've been saying all along, what's going to happen to her, so too the water inspects him. Gemara on the next daf is going to explain this statement. And Taisa brings from the Yerushalmi that mamish, all the Ramachivarim, everything, every bia, whatever it goes through, what's going to happen, al kapanim tehar, happens to him. Shenem, like it says. Now here we get a little bit more into drushes, a little bit here, and the Gemara is going to be more specific in this. It says, what? Right, so that's why the Gemara is going to discuss that. Ultimately, we'll see it's the boil, but the Gemara is going to discuss that. It says the pasuk in Bamidbar that uvo. Now the Gemara here also is going to explain what do you want from uvo? Are you saying that you're expounding because it could have said bo and it says uvo, which is an extra vav, or is it because it says the word uvo extra in the parsha over there, so you're saying the extra word uvo. The Gemara is going to explain which, when you're saying, how do you know that you're including, it says uvo, it's going to come into her, these waters, and it's going to make her bust and whatever. So, and you're saying that just like it happens to her, it happens to him. And you said because uvo. What are you saying? Because instead of saying bo, it says uvo? Or is it because it says the word uvo more than once? So we'll see that in the Gemara also. Continues the Mishnah. Kshem shasur labal. Just like she's forbidden to her husband, obviously, a Sotah, Eish, Mezana, so she's forbidden to the man who she was Mezana with. Shnemak says in the pasuk, Nitma v'nitma, the Rebbe Kiva. So here, it's clear that it's the extra vav that he's darshaning. Because it says, Ashatista isha tachas isha v'nitma. What does it say? V'nitma. The extra vav is coming to tell us that, there's a ribo here, and what? And just like she's forbidden to the husband, that's what the Tumah is, making her forbidden to the husband, so too she's forbidden to the Baal, to the boil. Amr Rabbi Shloimy says, and Kacha Yuderish Zechariah ben Akatzav. Zechariah ben Akatzav also darshan, like you're saying, from the extra vav. The reason why he's saying that is because there is a chaylik, there's someone who disagrees. Rabbi Yomi says, no, it's not from the extra vav. Shnei pa'am ha'murim beparsha. It's because it says it 2 times in the parsha. Nitma'a v'nitma'a, echad labal ve'echad laboil. That's how I know. Once is to tell us that she's forbidden to the husband, and one is to tell me that she's forbidden to the boil. Because as Rashi brings, it says 3 times. But he says, actually says 4 times. But he says v'nistra v'hi nitma'a, that pasuk which says nitma, that's not counted. Because actually, as the Gemara told us in the beginning of the Mesechta on the Beis Mabeis, that pasuk actually is talking about what's called Tumah Vadois, a Vadai Sotah, not a Savik Sotah. That when you have one aid who says, not the Kina, not the Stira, the one who says the Tumah, that's what that pasuk is talking about. Rather, you have the pasuk V'kines Ishli Nitma, you have the pasuk V'haisim Nitma. Now, there really is another pasuk, Ashatista isha tachasishma v'nitma'a. But the Gemara is going to bring on the next daf that Rabbi Kiva darshans that nitma teaching you that she's asa for truma. Now, Rashi actually says Rebbe agrees to that drasha that extra nitma, it's not only 2, there's really 3, really 4 like we said, but one's Sotah Daf, they cut that one out. They left for 3. Rebbe's only mentioning 2. What's with the third one? He agrees. The reason why he only says 2 of them over here is only because he heard Rabbi Kiva was darshaning. How do you know that just not only is the Baal Asa, but also the boil from the extra vav? On that, Rebbe said to him, no, it's not from the vav, because he doesn't darshan vavs. He was saying because of the extra time nitma, that's how you know it. But not that it only says 2 times, it says 3 times. I wasn't coming to tell you all the nitmas over here, says Rebbe. I just wanted to tell you, Rabbi Kiva, I disagree with you. You're telling you know it from the extra vav. I don't darshan vavs. I know it because it says extra time nitma in the parsha. Now, continues the Mishnah, boy bayoim. Now, the Gemara Mesechtes Brachas of Chavches tells us, wherever it says boy bayoim, that day, was the day that they appointed Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah to be the Nasi. We all know from the Haggadah, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, Kivim Shim Shana, that Gemara, that then there were Nisraber HaTamidim. Everyone came into yeshiva because everyone was allowed to come in. Because Rabbi Leil, who was the Nasi beforehand, and who maintained some of it, but Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah also became. So he would say, any Talmid Chacham that's not Teichei Kebarei, is not exactly on the outside as he is on the inside, is not allowed to come into the Beis Medrash. But on that day, this says, no, everyone's allowed to come in, and there was a lot of Torah that was increased on that day, and there was no suspended halacha in the Beis Medrash that wasn't explained on that day. Now, Rashi explains why we're going to say a bunch of interesting halachas over here based on boy bayoim. Says, why does it come in here in our Mishnah? So it says Rashi, Nira be'enai, it appears to me that the drasha we just said of nitman v'nitma was also said on that day. So therefore, that's why the Mishnah is going to go into all these boy bayoms now, because that was also explained on that day. And okay, once we mention, that's the style of Talmud Bavli that we get into then, and this is the Mishnah even, that we get into other things that boy bayom. So what was on that day also? Drasha b'kiva made the following drasha. Pasuk in Yikku, which we just had in this last week's parsha, says, "V'chol kli cheres, and any earthenware vessel, asher yipol mehem al toichai, that's going to fall into them dead sherets inside the earthenware vessel. Kol asher b'toichai yitma, whatever's inside is going to become tameh. Now, a kli cheres, a earthenware vessel, is a rishon l'toma, because the sherets, the dead bug that fell in, is a avatoma, making the earthenware vessel into a rishon. That makes the food item inside that's becoming tummy from the airspace of the kli cheres into a sheni, because it's becoming tummy from the kli. Says Rabbi Kiva like this: Eino emer tummy. Doesn't say kol asher b'toichai tummy. Doesn't say that whatever's inside will become tummy. Ele yitma. So he darshans l'tamei acherim. It's coming to say that it's going to contaminate other things. Meaning, it should have said tameh. What's the yud over there? You could read it as yitameh. It will contaminate other things. So that comes to teach you lomed al kikar sheni. That tells you regarding a loaf of bread that's a sheni l'tuma, which Rashi says the only reason why I'm picking a loaf of bread is because generally you have that in an oven, which in biblical times that was the earthenware vessel that they would have. You made a clay oven, very easy, and you would heat it up. So this earthenware vessel is like an oven. You have a dead sheret falls into the oven. So the oven is a rishon, the loaf of bread is a sheni. This teaches that the second level tuma loaf of bread, shemetame es ashlishi, that it contaminates truma and actually even chulin, because the pasuk doesn't differentiate. It's going to make something else into a shlishi l'tama. That's as Rabbi Kiva, you see from the yud over there, and it doesn't say tum, it says yitma, which is yitame. It will actually contaminate something else. Now, Rabbi Shloimy said to Rabbi Kiva, what? However the tuma will communicate its tuma from one thing to the next. So if you have this kikar sheni touching something else, make it into a shlishi. Now, Rabbi Shloimy said in general, he was saying like this. When he heard Rabbi Kiva's drasha, he said, "Mi gala ofer meinecha." Who's going to uncover the dust from your eyes, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai? Why? You would say, "Asad dar acher." there's going to be a later generation that's going to come, latar kikar shlishi, that they're going to purify and say that a loaf of bread, even if it's a truma bread, is not going to be a tamei as a shlishi. Why? Why would a later generation come along and say that no, even truma does not become a shlishi? Because there is no pasuk from the Torah that tells us that truma becomes a shlishi. We tell us that a truma becomes tamei as a shlishi from a kabbalah, as the Gemara is going to explain, but it doesn't say anywhere in the Torah. So a later generation is going to refute the kabbalah, as the Gemara is going to tell us on Daf Chav Testament Aleph. So you were saying all along, the Seged Kuman Adar, the Yidden in America, there's going to be a dar, someone that's going to say that, they're going to say there's no shlishi by truma. But how can you say that? Rabbi Kiva Talmidcha, your student Rabbi Kiva, maybe like mikro min haTorah shu tamei. He brings a pasuk from the Torah that even chulin is tamei as a shlishi. So like says the pasuk, kol hashabatoicha yitma. That whatever's inside of the oven, which is a sheni, it says a yud, yitamei, will contaminate something else, making other things into shlishi. So how could you say there's going to be a dor that's going to come, a later generation that's going to say that truma is not a shlishi, when even chulin, Rabbi Kiva brings a pasuk, becomes a shlishi. Another drasha, boy bayoyim darsh Rabbi Kiva, that same day Rabbi Kiva darshan a pasuk in Midbar. It says in Madoise mechutz le'ir, they're going to measure beyond the city as pa'as kedma on the eastern side, alpayim ba'am v'gayma 2,000 amas, and so on every side. That's the city. Outside of the city, you're going to measure 2,000 amas, the open parts of the city. But the pasuk right before that actually says, Mikira ir v'chutza, from the walls of the city outward, 1,000 amasav, 1,000 amas all around. Now, the problem is like this. You can't say that the migrash ha'ir, that the open space of the cities that the Levim are supposed to have, is 1,000 amas. Shekvar nem alpayim amas. The pasuk already says 2,000 amas. At the same time, you can't say 2,000 amas. Shekvar nem alf amas already says 1,000 amas. So, okay, so how do you resolve the pasuk? So on that darshan Rabbi Kiva, 1,000 amma migrash. There's 1,000 amas of space that you clear out from any bushes and any houses and any plants and any trees for the beauty of the city, that there should be some ear space. Now, the extra 1,000 amma of the 2,000, that wasn't mentioned to give to the Levium. That was only mentioned for going out of a Tuchum HaShabbos, to know how far you're allowed to go on Shabbos for the city limits. So that resolves the contradiction according to Rabbi Kiva, that was saying 1,000, 2,000. 1,000 was just to say how much you have to have open space, and 2,000 was just saying the Tchum of Shabbos. However, that's, you're talking about Karfaf, you're talking about that you get from a city 70 and then another 2,000 from there. So that's a different halacha of Karfaf, which Machlik is exactly if it's only dafka between two cities or from every city. Yeah, I hear what you're saying. Where are you going to measure that from? Al Kapana, but the actual Tchum is 2,000. The question is where it starts from. Now, Reb Lezer ben Neichel Yosek Lili, he darshans it a little bit differently. He says, no, 1,000 amma migrash, 1,000 amas is the open space. Va'alpayim amma, and the 2,000 amas surrounding the cities that were given to Levium, they would leave 1,000 around the city for migrash, and then the rest, meaning the remaining 1,000, would be sadis ukramim, would be fields and vineyards. So, again, a different type of resolution to this contradiction. 1,000 would be cleared, open space, and then you have the remaining 1,000 for fields and for vineyards again, but not having been built up. But that was what was given to them from the 2,000 amas around them. Another drasha, B'yam Darsha B'kiva Darshan, a pasuk in Shemais. A lot of drashas he gave that day. It says the famous pasuk in Shemais, Oz Yasher Moshe, then Moshe Rabbeinu will sing U'bnei Yisrael, and the Jewish people says Shir Hazayis, this song LaHashem to Hashem. B'yam, they said Leimer Hazay Tzizogim, saying. Now Shein Tamalem Leimer Hazay Tzizogim saying doesn't really make sense over here, because whenever it says in the Torah Leimer, it makes sense. The Shekhinah was speaking to Moshe Rabbeinu that he should go and repeat it to the Jewish people. That's what Leimer, right? Hashem is speaking to the Jewish people, to Moshe Leimer to say, and he's supposed to say it over to the Jewish people. But here you can't say that, because what does that mean? Moshe Rabbeinu was singing Leimer? What does that mean? So what is lamer coming to teach you? Yeah, it was lamer. Moshe was saying lamer that they should also say, because they were responding to the shira after Moshe, al kol dav v'dav. Whatever he said, they said. Kikayrin as Halil, and the Gemara on Daf Lamed Amabei is going to explain this Mishnah, like those who say Halil, that the Chazan says, and then they repeat what he says, so lekach nema lema. That's what it says lemar, which he would say, and then they responded to what he's saying. He says, no, kikayrin as Shema. It's like those who recite the Shema, which again, the Gemara is going to explain that also in Daf Lamed. What does that mean? He says, no, lamer is coming to say like those who respond to Shema and not to those who respond to Hal. Another drasha, someone else now, but it was the same day. Shub Horkin is darshan, le'over Eiv as HaKadosh Baruch Hu elam ahava. Eiv, the famous biblical figure, served HaKadosh Baruch Hu only out of love, because he loved HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shlomo says the pasuk in Eiv, Hey nikteleni, behold, he's going to kill me, lo yayachel. To him, I'm going to hope. Doesn't make a difference. Whatever Hashem does, I love him, even if he's going to kill me. Now, but still, v'adayin hadav shakel. But still, the jury is still out. It's still in the balance, because you could still tilt this pasuk either way. Because you could either read this pasuk, loy ani mitzape. Yeah, even if he'll kill me, to him I'm going to wait and hope. Or eini mitzape, or I'm not going to wait. Because, as Rashi tells us, you could read the pasuk, Hey niktaleni, he's going to kill me. So loy ayachel, as I mezuk loy metan aleph, you could read it. No, I'm not going to hope for him anymore, because we have many times that loy is darshan, like with a lamed vav, as the Gemara is going to explain. So you could read this either way. So maybe it's not proving that he served God out of love. Another pasuk teaches in Eiv, ad egva, until I die, loy aser tu masi mimeni. I'm not going to remove my wholesomeness from me, meaning he's always going to be faithful to Hashem. So you learn that out of love is what he did everything for Hashem. So Amar Rabbi Shua here again, when he heard this drasha, he got up and he said, he doesn't say got up, but he says, Mi gal ofa menecha Rabbi Yochanan Zakkai. Again he says, who's going to take off the dust from your eyes, Rabbi Yochanan Zakkai? She'yisa deresh kol yamecha, you used to darshan all your days. Shloi avad Eiv es hamakom elam yira, that Eiv only served God out of fear from the worry of the punishments that shouldn't come to him. Shneimel says in the pasuk in Eiv, Ish, a man who is tam, complete, v'yasha, and upstanding, Yorei Elikim, he feared God, meaning he didn't love God, and therefore he was removed from bad. But Yeshua, Talmid Tamidcha, but Yeshua, who's the student of your student, who he was a student of Rebbe Kiva, Lamad, he learns Shemehava also that he did it out of love, and therefore how could you say that he did it out of fear? Thank you to any time for hosting us.